Welcome to Driftwood Guitars. My name is Chris. Behind the camera is Matt, as always. And today we're going to show you guys how to apply a proper sunburst. The sunburst of your dreams. What was it you said, Matt?
Burst onto the scene.
We're going to burst onto the scene with this one.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I know for me that when you look online, a lot of times when you see sunbursts, you get these, I don't even know how to describe them. They're like just almost black around the edge. And then they quickly transition to like a yellow in the middle. And there's like not a lot of gradation between it. Is that a word? Gradation?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not a lot of gradation between the colors.
Look at this guy. Got his word of the day off the back of a cereal box, probably. Feel like Sesame Street. This episode is brought to you by the word gradation.
Jesus Christ.
Is that what happened at Chernobyl? Was gradation. He's suffering from gradation poisoning.
Oh, God. It's the worst. Okay, that wasn't that funny. All right. I don't know about you guys. You get online and you see all of those guitars that just transition too quickly from one color to the next. And what I always wanted to achieve with my guitars was more of a gradual color change from the darker outside colors to the lighter color in the middle. And in fact, one of the first guitars I ever did a proper sunburst on was a guitar that I built for Matt.
Yeah, I'm OG. I've got like number 6.
Yeah, I built an archtop for Matt 9 years ago. It's been 9 years. And I did a sunburst on it, and that was close to what I wanted to achieve, but I learned a lot of lessons in that one. And since then, I've been doing a lot of bursts on my acoustic guitars, but as everybody knows, we have a line of electric guitars now called the Untitled. And I was getting ready to spray the sunburst on this one, and I thought, why not do a video on it? So what we're going to do, after all of that digression, is we're going to show you guys how I go about spraying a sunburst on this guitar and how I do achieve that very gradual, nice look from a darker color on the outside to a lighter color on the inside. There's also those ways that a lot of the guitar companies are doing them now where they do, I don't know, they call them like sunset bursts, where it's like a dark color that goes into a light, and those are cool too. What we're going to show you today is going to apply to that as well. I will say that pretty much everything that we're going to be talking about today is only going to work for folks that are actually spraying their finishes with an HVLP gun, because we have to do a lot of mixing to achieve the way that we're going to do it. So if you're doing this with rattle cans at home, a lot of the things I'm going to show you aren't going to apply. But with that, I'll tell you what I've done with this guitar. It's already been pore filled first and foremost. The top of this guitar has already been pore filled. It's incredibly smooth. And it's got 3 coats of lacquer on top of it as well to go ahead and seal all of that in. And then with dry sandpaper, we've actually hit it with 1000 grit sandpaper, and it is just absolutely smooth at this point. There's not a single little dent or movement of my fingers as I rub across here. It's just dead smooth. And that is really, really crucial to what we're about to do with that sunburst. On the title cashers, we also do a matching sunburst on this overlay right here. So we're going to do that as well. But what I need to do next to get it in the paint booth for the burst coat is to mask off any areas on the guitar that I don't want any color on. If you're doing a traditional sunburst like on a Strat or even a Tele, you're not going to do any masking because you want to do the burst on the sides and on the back and on the top. But on these guitars, we don't want any burst on the sides or the back of the guitar. So I'm going to mask those off real quick, and we'll do some B-roll or something while we do that. But then we're going to get it in the paint booth. I'm going to hang it up in the paint booth, and I'm going to show you how we go about mixing all of our paints. No, we're just hearing now that gradation, in fact, is not a word. Is gradation.
Gradation.
Is gradation.
Yeah.
So put down the keyboard, step away from it, and back to our scheduled programming now. All right, so we have the headstock nice and masked off, taking my time to just make sure it's done really well, and it's going to give us some good results. The one thing I want to say about these sunbursts is, especially on a guitar that has binding, if that's what you're doing, is that you're going to have some overspray onto that, and you can always scrape that off. It's also why it's important, at least if you're going to follow my technique, that you spray the burst on top of some clear coat. I think that a lot of people really mess up because they somehow get it in their head that you're staining the wood. Remember, there's a difference between staining the wood and doing a sunburst. You want to, if you really want that beautiful translucent look where the light comes through the finish goes through the color and then into the wood and then reflects back out and hits your eyes so that you still see all that beautiful grain. You want to do this technique. I think that there's a place for wood staining, but that's how you're going to end up with that more traditional look like you would on like a hand-rubbed violin or the hand-rubbed sunburst that you get on a lot of mandolins. It's just different. It doesn't capture the light the same way. And I know that a lot of people ask me, how do I get that lovely color that I'm able to get? And I think a big part of it is because of this. The other upside to it is that it does give you the ability to scrape back any sunburst that maybe bled onto areas where you don't want it. We have all the things that we're going to use to be doing this. Once again, I'm going to be using an HVLP gun, so this whole system is going to apply to people who are doing this because we're going to be doing different kind of mixing with our lacquers so that we can change the properties of it so that we get it to spray the way that we want. The other thing that we're going to be using is the, what are these? The color tone liquid stains. I also have the trans tint. Let's be honest, they're the same thing. They just are relabeled. There's a lot of different stains that are out there. These ones are all compatible with, I think they're good for water-based finishes as well as lacquer-based finishes like I'm going to be spraying here. We have our Cardinal nitrocellulose lacquer, the clear gloss. I have some lacquer thinner, and then most importantly is some retarder. This, to me, is the game changer for doing this on a lacquer-based system. The retarder is going to allow that finish to not dry as quickly, which is going to be super important so that when we can spray it lighter, and it has more time to atomize and hit the guitar, but most importantly, it has more time to flash out and really blend with the other colors that we're going to apply to the guitar. The other thing that I like about doing Sunburst is that it's a little bit like, I'm not a cook, Matt's a cook. He's a big cook. And the colors are kind of, it's whatever you're feeling. And for me, you know, I work with my clients a lot of the times and I'm like, well, do you like a honey burst? Do you want a more traditional cherry burst or tobacco sunburst? There's a lot of different ways you can do them. But for these title casters that we're doing, I just kind of get to go to work with it. And I've been experimenting, and what I'm going to show you guys today is like a kind of a three-tone sunburst, but it's not going to look like traditional three-tone burst that you see a lot of the time. So we'll start off with like a yellow, and then we're going to start adding a little bit of red, and then we're going to add a little bit of reddish brown. And then, but they're all going to get blended together really nicely and end up with a really cool, you're not going to see a single color change. It's all going to be this beautiful uniform color change. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a little bit of the Cardinal lacquer in here. I'm only going to put in maybe an inch, a few centimeters worth of lacquer into here. This does not take much at all. I want you to show them here how much we've put into it real quick. So you can see there, not a whole lot in the cup, right? Not much at all. Now, what we're gonna do, pro tip, just drill a hole in the tip of your lacquer thinner so you don't have to take the lid off. And we're gonna cut this, probably do like a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 parts lacquer to 1 part lacquer thinner. And I'm actually going to just kind of apply some of it here. A little bit of that. Stir stick here. And I'm gonna get that kind of mixed a little bit. All right, now we get to pick our color. So the first thing that we're going to do with this is I'm going to use a little bit of the vintage amber. There's a lot of different names for this, but it's kind of like an orangey yellow color. I think Martin uses this vintage amber on some of their guitars when they try to get that antique look to it. But trick here to doing this, if you're going to mix it in the cup the way that I do, is you want to be stirring while you do your drops of color into it. So we're just going to apply that, quite a few drops. Gonna get a little crazy. And you can see what color it is as you pull that out. You can start to get a sense of how concentrated of the color you have there. You know, I'm looking for like a little bit of a school bus yellow kind of. And that feels pretty good right there. So that's gonna be our first color. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna throw my respirator on, we're gonna go in the paint booth, and we're gonna begin applying this first coat of color that we're doing. Oh wait, we almost forgot to add the retarder. Did we add the retarder yet? We did not. We did not add the retarder. So, we want to add the retarder to this, and it doesn't take a whole lot, especially because we have just a little bit in here. We're just going to put a little bit in. A little bit goes a long way. If you use this stuff, this is the, who makes this? This is the McFadden that you can buy at LMI. We'll put a link to that in the description of this video. I find this stuff works a lot better than the stuff that StewMac sells. StewMac has a retarder as well, but it just like, if a teaspoon of this went a certain distance, you'd have to use like a cup of the StewMac stuff to get the same amount of slowing down the finish time out of the StewMac stuff. So I do recommend this McFadden stuff. So we've got our nice little mix here. What I'm going to do is we're going to go into the paint booth. It's just hard to talk, obviously, with the respirator on, so I'll do all my talking out here. Is we're going to go in there and we're just going to get this gun dialed in so it's just a nice even spray coat, but we're not going to go super heavy. This is just color. We're not trying to get a full coat of lacquer onto it. So I'm going to spray both the headstock and the body of the guitar, the whole thing, and it's going to be ugly yellow. And you're going to be like, what are you doing? But you'll see where we're going with it first. So let's do that first. Alright, you saw me there. One thing I didn't mention before we went into the paint booth was that I did a wipe down with a tack cloth. Super, super important. We obviously took our time before we even started recording this video doing the sanding, and I wiped it down with naphtha first. And once again, prep work is super important. So, what we have right now is an ugly yellow guitar. You might be into it, I just don't like it. So what I do, because we have that retarder in there, I'm not worried about that drying really quickly. That finish is still dripping wet, which is super good. Well, dripping wet's not the right term. It's very tacky wet because we put on a very thin coat. This coat is quite a bit thinner than I would consider a full coat of just clear lacquer. So what I want to do now is start darkening that. The light color that we just applied, the yellow, is what's going to be mostly our lightest color right in the very center of the guitar, and then we're going to start adding more dark colors and just start feathering it all in. So what I think I did on the last one, I say I think because I can't quite remember, is I did the reddish brown. So this is a trans tint. I'm sure that the StewMac stuff has a different name to it, but we're going to use a reddish brown here. And I use a white stir stick because it shows me what color we're using. It's another. These are just these little fiberglass rods that you can get at Home Depot. So once again, stirring while we do it. We're just going to apply. You have to do a lot more than you think you do a lot of the times. And see how it's turning a much more of a brownish orangish color? Yeah, you can see there. I'm actually going to add a little bit of, I'm going to get crazy here. We're going to do a little bit of some cherry red too. Just a little bit. This will go a long way. Like I said, it's kind of like cooking. You can kind of get nuts here and do what you want. I do notice that with my technique, I prefer to go with a much more concentrated color and do a thinner coat. The other option would be to do a less concentrated color and do a thicker coats. But the issue is with these thicker coats is that it tends to just not spray as well. You end up with being able to see all the individual little particles of color, like on Matt's guitar. That's the one thing that never made me happy about it, was that there's it almost looks like a spray paint can, how you can see the little atomized droplets hitting the guitar. If you follow this technique, you won't see a single droplet of actual individual color. That feels good. Nice and, oh yeah, I'll show you. Yeah. You can see, don't mind this, that's all like dried epoxy on the end of my stir stick, so it looks gross. But so we're going to do this, and what we're going to do is go back into the paint booth, and now I'm going to set this gun back. Even a little bit less finish is going to come out of the gun. How to spray a proper spray gun is a whole separate video, but we're going to dial back the fluid so that less fluid comes out of the gun, and we're almost going to treat this like an airbrush at this point. So you'll see what I do in there. We're going to just work ourselves from the outside, be nice and fluid with our hand, and just slowly feather it in. It's kind of just a spray a little bit, step back, take a look at it. Am I happy with it? Is it blotchy? Is it even? Do I have the look that I want? And the way that I kind of picture the Sunburst on a guitar is almost like a guitar pick. I'm almost kind of going for this triangular look. I'm gonna spray the color in a pattern that's like at an angle at the top bout, and then just bring it nice and round at the lower bout. You'll see what I mean once we get in there. But yeah, so we can slap this back on. We're not gonna wait for that to dry. We want to keep going while the finish is still wet. And Matt has a respirator on too.
All right.
Okay, I think you could really see there at the end, I got this gun dialed in, so it's just barely spraying anything, and it gives you the opportunity to really take your time. I noticed that before I started using the retarder in my finish, that when you spray fine, really, really fine, that lacquer dries so fast that by the time it comes out of the gun and travels like 12 inches to get to the surface of the guitar, it almost dries. So you end up with this like really fuzzy finish. But the retarder slows that drying process down significantly so that as it hits, it still has time to relax and just become one with the finish. And so once again, you end up with those really tiny atomized droplets and a very, very invisible gradation between between each color. So those, I'm really happy with that. You notice that I kind of sprayed a little bit in the middle. I don't want yellow in the middle of the guitar. I wanted more of an amber color, so we sprayed a little bit of orange, or that orangish brown just then. So now the last thing that I'm going to do is put some dark mission brown in there. That's what the name of it is if you're using the trans tint finishes, and we're going to do that around the outside. We're getting pretty low on our gun now. I don't know if we can get that in there, but that's fine. The more finish that we spray, the more concentrated all of this becomes. So instead of trying to remix colors here, what we're going to do is just add some more brown to it, and we're going to get this to the point now where it's going to be pretty dark, and we're just going to be misting the outside edges of the guitar. So we're just going to add a little bit of this dark mission brown.
I just want the record to show, I'm sure people watching this probably feel the same way. I'm a little angry at you because you make this look really easy.
Well, I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Remember that I came about doing building guitars coming from a guitar from a car painting background. I used to paint airplanes in the Air Force. I was a sheet metal guy. So we did all the sheet metal and carbon fiber and fiberglass repairs, but we also painted airplanes. So as a side hustle, I started painting cars. So really the first few things that I did on a guitar that came out good was the finish work. Now mind you, lacquer spraying is a completely different animal than spraying automotive paint, but it's a thing. Speaking of that, me and Matt we're working on our paint color for the giveaway guitar. So if you guys are interested in the giveaway guitar, make sure you subscribe, because you have to be a subscriber.
Yeah.
And we're going to be giving away that
Go ahead and hit like too.
Hit that like button.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you again that color that we ended up with. See how dark this is? I mean, we are dark brown now. It's really nice and dark. It should go on very nicely. Super concentrated. And we're going to go in there and we're going to spray this last coat. You'll notice that the headstock is more of that sunset style Sunburst, where it's going to go from dark to light, whereas we're trying to do from the outside in on the guitar body. So that's what we're going to do, just paying attention to how it looks. So we'll go in paint booth and do this last coat. Okay, so we got that last coat on there, and I think it looks really nice. It's a little darker than I was actually originally shooting for. Remember though, as we have just sprayed the burst on this guitar, it doesn't have that nice gloss look to it yet. So because it's kind of a matte satiny look, because he has such a fine particulate on here, it can actually look darker than it actually is. And once we actually spray the next clear coat of lacquer on top of here, it's really gonna pull out all that grain and all that pop of color that we've added to it. But what I like to check for at this point, because we have this area here, is that, see, this is still nice and sticky. And that's exactly what you want. I took my time. I don't know, we've probably been collectively spraying for about, I'd say 10 to 15 minutes, and the finish is still nice and wet, and that's what you want. You don't want it to take like the afternoon to dry or anything, but you don't want it to dry super fast. And we still were able to retain that nice look in the middle, but you can't see a single color line, and that's what a lot of times where I think people mess up is you'll see like brown, orange, yellow, and like you don't want that. If this is the look that you're going for, that's what you don't want. What I like to do at this point is, while that finish is still just very ever so slightly tacky, is that we can actually go ahead and start peeling off our masking tape. So we'll do that now. You have to be careful if you want to ride the lightning like this, that you don't like let any of the sticky ends of your sandpaper land on the wet parts of the finish, because you'll have regrets. So the reason I do this while the finish is still just ever so slightly like tacky is because I find that it gives me crisper lines. If you do it once the finish is like dried overnight, sometimes you can actually like crack the finish on your hard edges. Not crack it, but you can chip it out. So when it's still just a little bit squishy, that's a technical term. I find that I get better results that way. But see, boom, look how good that's looking. And we still got to go in there and clean it up with a razor blade, but it looks damn good, right?
Very nice.
Very nice.
Shifties.
And then we'll do the same here. I kind of went nuts on the paint on the back here. Yeah. Also, don't do this. I sprayed this. The back is done on this guitar. I sprayed it yesterday morning, so it has been drying in enough time, and it's a satin finish that I'm not worried about like my tape messing up that at all. Don't be in a rush.
What's the old saying? Haste makes waste.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Makes sense.
Yeah, you gonna learn today?
You'll learn today, boy. Alright, so here we're gonna be a little bit more careful. So we're gonna start peeling this off. Mind you, we've only masked off the sides of the binding. The front part, I still gotta scrape that back with a razor blade. This is the last of the title casters out of this first batch. We've already sold a few into our second batch, so if you guys are interested in buying a title caster, you can learn more about them on the website, and they're available for purchase for the holiday season. Tell your wife that you've been a good boy and that you want one of these. So I'm gonna let that sit for just. Actually, I'm gonna let it. We're gonna go now. It feels really good. I'm gonna scrape back this finish so we can make it look good. All right, inevitably, what you'll end up with is a couple of little maybe dust specks that got on top of it, and those little dust specks will get darker than the rest of the finish. So now that it's nice and tacked up, I can actually knock off any of those little dust specks now. But what we need to do is get a nice razor blade, and we're gonna scrape back the burst color off the top of this binding. This is really the best way to do this. You could spend forever trying to mask it, but you're never going to mask it perfect. You're just not. And this is the way that pretty much all professional finishers do their burst. They scrape it back with a razor blade. It works really, really well. And it's easier than it looks. I think that a lot of people might see me do this and go like, I can't do that. Or that it's too risky, but just take your time and you really can't mess it up. What I do is I hold my razor blade kind of like this, and what I'm going to do, we'll use this as a sample, is I actually use the fat of my finger as my depth gauge, so I can kind of go like this, or I can actually apply more razor blade if I want to, but I'm actually going to ride on the edge of my finger on the edge of the guitar. So with the razor blade in my hand, I'm not going to do it right this second. It's going to go like this. So that's what makes it nice and easy and controllable, is that you're setting the depth, and then you're just going to work with it like this.
Your finger's basically a router bearing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really. And then so we're just going to find the right depth with it.
Did I do good, Chris? Did I do good at explaining
Great,
it?
Matt.
And so because this finish is not completely dry yet, it comes off just nice and easy. You don't want it to be so wet that it'll actually just be smearing it, though. I'm sure this is really difficult to get on film, but you can see how you get a very crisp line, though. Way crisper than you ever could if you were relying on tape. This is another example of why you don't want to spray a super thick Sunburst too, because what will end up happening is that you end up with this giant ridge right here where you scrape back off all that color that you just sprayed. But because my color is very concentrated and I'm able to apply a very thin coat, because it's concentrated, this Sunburst finish is not a very thick finish, which just leaves me less work on this part. So we're just going to keep knocking it out real quick. I know it's difficult to see, but I think you get the idea. And then you end up with this like part here where it's still on the guitar. So you can actually hit that up with like a sandpaper. Sorry, I need, oh, there we go. I've got some 600 grit. You can actually just take like a 600 grit and knock that off with that instead of with the razor blade. Just takes it off a little easier. There's a certain level of flow that you get here when you're doing this scrape back, where you suddenly get dialed in and you just go to work, and it's very, very satisfying. Just make sure that you are paying attention. Do not lose sight of what you're doing, because you can screw up so fast. The only crap thing about Sunburst is that if you screw up, fixing that spot that you messed up is can be very difficult. That's a separate video too. I've kind of started to finally really nail that down, get real good at recovering from messing up a Sunburst, like sanding through the Sunburst, like when you've got the clear on. I can recover from it pretty well now, but it takes a lot of practice to get good at that. If you do mess up, it's probably better to just sand it off and do the Sunburst again, honestly. Let this dry overnight, sand off your Sunburst, and try again tomorrow. I know you won't take that advice, but you should do it. The other thing I want to note is the reason we're able to scrape back to this really nice pristine maple binding is because we had clear coat down first. If you didn't have that clear coat down, this color would actually have stained the maple and you wouldn't be able to scrape it back to a perfectly clear, blonde color, because it would now be almost a reddish wood. So just another really good example of why I think that to do this properly, you need to do clear, color, and then clear again. I have a strong opinion about that. I think most people really mess up in that department. It's funny how many videos I watch online, and so many people they think of it as a wood stain, and you need to think of it as a finish stain. I think of it as a way that the light travels through the finish, through the color, and then hits the wood. Almost there. Home stretch. I think that looks super good.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, see, look, I almost screwed the pooch. There's some color over here. I need to hit up just a little bit of that. Besides this little spot, she is done. So what we can do is I'm actually going to, before we sign off, I'm going to put another clear coat on here. And I think that you need to stick around to see this, because this last coat of clear, or the next coat of clear that we put on here, I think is really going to bring out what we've done here so you can see the final results. Like I said, because it's kind of satin right now, it has a little bit more of a dark undertone than it actually is going to have. Yeah, I'm gonna go clean my gun out and make sure. I think on the headstock I need to do a little bit of the same sort of work on there, and then we'll show you what this thing finally looks like. So stick around for the finished result. So we went ahead and cleaned this out. I've got just clear lacquer in here, slightly reduced with some lacquer thinner and some retarder. I've went ahead and wiped down everything with a nice tack cloth and double, quadruple, triple check that I don't have any quadruple and triple check. See this backwards. That we don't have any sort of overspray on the neck or the body, because remember, now that we're applying clear, we're going to be sealing in any sort of issues that we may have. So I'm just going to spray this and then let you guys see how it looks and how the finished product came out. Obviously, I've got more clear that I need to apply over the next few days, but once we put this on there, you really get a sense to see how the light travels through it. Okay, I've let this dry for just a few minutes, and I think now you can really see how that Sunburst looks. Just super nice. Matt even pointed out there's just some couple of tiny little dust specks inside here. And a lot of times that does happen when you spray the burst itself, if you do my technique, because you're just dusting it on. It's important that you don't try to remove any of those dust specks just yet. We want to build up that clear coat first, and we will remove those dust specks when we do our level sanding. I'm not actually going to do any level sanding on this until I get at least, 7 to 8 coats of lacquer on top of here, and even then I'm going to be incredibly careful so that I don't sand into this. But man, I hope it comes out good on the video there, because it just came out super nice. But just a little sales pitch. We are going to be doing another batch of, I think, about 10 more of these going into the holidays. So if you guys are interested, the orders are available for those. $4,500 gets you one of these awesome title casters, hard shell case, the works, the whole deal, just in time for Christmas. We appreciate you guys watching. I hope that you guys learned something from this. I know that Sunburst are such a a mystery to a lot of people, and I hope that I pulled back the curtain a little bit on that and made it a little bit more approachable. Don't be afraid of it. If you mess up, all you gotta do is sand it off and start over again. Trust me, I've done that many a times. It pisses you off. I'm not saying you're not gonna be angry. Don't smash the guitar. Go inside, have a beer, have a bourbon, and then come back and sand it. And then if you think about it, it's usually a good thing.
Welcome to Driftwood Guitars, presenting Ask Me How I Know with Chris Alvarado.
Exactly. But yeah, man, we'll see y'all in the next one, guys. Thanks so much.